Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal. Here we explore how leaders in medtech navigate uncertainty, make better risk based decisions, and build safe and effective products to support sustainable growth. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my guest, David Grilly. He is a specialist expert in system safety engineering. Currently, he's a senior engineering consultant and co founder of North Star Haptics. Previously, he was at Abbott and Honeywell, specializes in risk management and system safety. I have known David for a while now, and I just love his energy and excitement about technical stuff, but also leadership stuff. So I can't wait to get started with David on this topic. We're going to talk about, guys, an interesting topic today. That is about how we can use AI responsibly in the product development process. So I hope you'll like it, but please engage in the conversation, share your comments. With that, David, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal, and definitely a pleasure to be here and to talk to everyone also listening here. So hope you're doing well as well.
Great, David. It's so great to have you. And please call me Naveen, okay? We are on first name basis here. I want to start by asking you, David, a little bit your career journey. What got you here at this moment that you're working as a solo consultant after so many years of excellent experience? Give us a little bit of a glimpse in your career journey.
Well, yeah, I feel like the story of my career in general has been just a jack of a lot of different trades. And I mean, it's the same thing with the hobbies I have at home. I have so many different hobbies that I focus on, things like that, right? So really, when I got my start in medical device just shortly after getting out of college and things like that. And believe it or not, what got me into medical device wasn't necessarily like biomedical engineering experience. I was an electrical engineer, to be honest. It was actually information technology experience, my knowledge of computers and things like that. When I got my job at Data Sciences International way back when, that was what the boss says, like, hey, you know computers in ways that all these other people don't. And it was amazing how that became extremely useful for the work I did trying to troubleshoot and support and fix a lot of problems there. And honestly, that well-rounded set of skills that I kind of just bring to the table served me well when I went on to assist medical and when I decided to dabble a little bit in aerospace engineering at Honeywell. So I meander a little bit, and then back to medical device again when I worked at Abbott. So it's been a fun journey. And I guess what's brought me to consulting is just wanting to share that skill set with other groups that really need someone that isn't just laser focused on one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Someone that can help solutions all across the board there.
But I think this is where your professional experience is so interesting in this context, because you know technology firsthand, and you also know firsthand what the medical device product development environment looks like. I mean, you were in a complicated medical device product development environment. So I want to start by asking you, like, reflect on your experience that way. And maybe if you came across any application of AI, I know it's so new, but if you have seen AI being applied in that product development process, please share something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at Abbott, I'll be honest, yes, it is relatively new technology, AI. My experience at Abbott was probably what a lot of people's experience is like, hey, we have AI. What can we do with this? And just sort of a, nebulous thought of like, hey, maybe we could use it for this. Maybe we could use it for that. How can we save some time doing this? But not really a concrete structured, we are going to implement it for new product development for XYZ. It was very much exploratory. Here's one model that we have access to. And to be honest, a lot of fear with like, hey, if we share this information with this model, is our IP somehow going to get out into the field and cause problems for us and things like that? So that's been my experience so far. And, I think we can definitely discuss like, hey, what can we do to focus how we want to use AI and how we can present that to our senior leadership and things like that. So some of the things that I'd seen at Abbott was just, hey, why don't we use this to look at complaints trending and things like that?
I think it reflects my own experience as well, is that, hey, we have this amazing technology, amazing tool. Everyone is talking about it. Let's put some good use in our space, do something about it, but not being very clear about exactly what problem we want to solve. So I'm hearing you say that, and it seems like even the top management executives are excited about it, and they may be pushing down on people and say, go figure out how you can use AI. So we are living in this environment. I guess we could walk into maybe some idea generation phase now. Hey, from your experience, where would be like a good spot to start figuring out this problem statement for AI deployment? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've seen is that AI can be an incredible time saver for a lot of different things that I would say are kind of busy work. The way I look at AI is you can introduce a lot of risk to it, right? We've heard about hallucinations and it confidently giving you wrong answers and things like that. And some of that kind of comes from not having the experience on how to interact with AI and
Mhm.
how we communicate with it. But some of the things that I think are low hanging fruit, high impact, low risk would be, when we're working with system engineers, they got to write requirements, right?
Mhm.
And I think we all that, if we've written requirements, know that it can be a bit of a time consuming task to spell out those requirements in the system engineering language and make sure that the prose is correct and things like that. And so I know for my personal use, when I've been writing software and things like that, I will start by having AI maybe help me get those requirements on paper and be a cognitive tool for writing those requirements. But I caution, I never had it make decisions for me on the requirements and
Mhm.
come up with the requirements on my behalf. So that's, I'd say, at least one of the uses that I've seen
Yeah.
so far. A good one to start with.
Yeah, so let's kind of double click on that a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper. I totally agree. I think applying AI for developing the requirements is a good idea. I feel like many times we might also miss something because we are
Mhm.
so busy writing them, chasing timelines and deadlines. We do the best we can, but we may miss something. So when it comes to requirements writing, tell us a little bit more about what we should be aware of when it comes to applying AI. We talked about hallucinations, fine, but how can we actually put it to good use in a responsible way?
Yeah, and the way I look at it when trying to leverage AI is, again, I kind of went back to, I'm not having it make the decisions for me, right? I'm going to break out this famous IBM quote, right, where they were famous for saying that computers can't be held accountable, and therefore a computer shouldn't be making management decisions, right? And for me, I feel like AI really fits into that same space. It can't be held accountable, and it really shouldn't be making the decisions for me based on that. And when I'm trying to think of like, hey, how can I use AI to enhance something or make something faster? I'm always kind of keeping that in the back of my head. I need to be in control of it. I'm still the decision maker. It's a partner, right? I mentioned having it as a cognitive tool. And
Mhm.
kind of going back to what you said is, hey, when we're writing requirements, maybe there's something I missed. Being able to
Okay.
have a good set of instructions that encourages AI to push back and say, did you think of this? Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I didn't.
So let's make it a little bit more tangible. And I want to kind of invite your feedback on this idea that I'm just thinking about is the right question to ask an AI tool in this space would be, hey, here's the intended use for our device.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some, you know, other competitive devices that we have or some other experience we have. Help me scope out the requirement space. Don't ask the AI, here's my intended use. Give me a list of requirements that I can put in my design history file. Did I get that right?
Yes, I think that's correct. So, I mean, I think the critical thing is being able to gate or limit what AI is going to do for you. And it's almost a trade in itself, I think, these days, or it's becoming a trade when you're working with AI, being able to develop a specific set of instructions or guidelines that you hand to the AI and be like, this is how you're going to act and how you're going to respond to my prompts and what I want you to do and what I don't want you to do. For instance, if I've worked with Cloud Code before, that's extremely important, not only so that it doesn't, I think we've heard recently, delete an entire database in 9 seconds in your
Yes.
backups, but being very granular about like what it's allowed to do and making it into almost like a junior software development partner for you as opposed to something making calling all the shots.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a little bit. Guys, if you are joining us just now, my guest today is David Greeley, and we are having a wonderful conversation about applying AI tools in the product development environment for medical devices. Please continue to share your thoughts and comments. And David, we have a comment here by another David, and he's saying it seems that a wise approach is to regard AI as a helper. Exactly what you just said. Maybe a junior
Absolutely.
software engineer, ask for help. However, don't give it a task and say, forget about it. So
Yeah.
ask AI as a helper, but a human should be involved and even responsible for decisions. Would you agree? Absolutely. So you're saying do not give the authority to make decisions to AI.
Mhm.
Ask it to give us options that we can decide.
And I've even just recently read an op-ed too. It was actually by Jacob Aaron. I can share that later. But yeah, he expressed the same thoughts when he was trying to code using LLMs, basically trying to customize the model's behavior and interactions and turn it into, like we were saying, more of a cognitive tool for development. So a partner, something that's able to push back, maybe ask questions and drive you to think critically. Because one of the pitfalls too about AI is that a lot of them are designed to give you information that, unquestioningly, and really sound like a confident source of intelligence. When if you don't know what you're doing, sometimes you find that it is really not a great source of intelligence. Sometimes it'll
Yeah.
make mistakes, and you're like, no, not right. Yeah.
So I'll share a trick with everybody here. Is I've been using this for more than one year. I primarily work with OpenAI's ChatGPT now in their, I think, model 5.2 something. And one of the tricks I have learned, David, is that if you clearly see that the answer is wrong, you stop and say, this is the correct answer. Why did you get it wrong? And let it analyze what it did to get it wrong. So my experience is that it doesn't intend to give you an incorrect answer. It intends to give you the best answer that meets your query at that point of time. So it also depends upon how you frame the question. Does that sound kind of right to you? That has been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI doesn't know what it doesn't know, but yeah, like, most of us, when we don't know what we don't know, we can be very honest about it and express that to our colleagues and foster some discussion. A lot of the models out there right now, though, are kind of set up in such a way that, like you said, it's going to give you the best information that it has available. It's going to express it with confidence. It's not going to question what you're asking it to do necessarily.
Right.
And so that's where being able to gate what it does and tell it specifically how to interact with you becomes important.
A funny thing comes to my mind, David, is that as humans, when we hear a question that doesn't make sense, we have an urge to say it's a stupid question. AI will never do that. Whatever question you ask, it's going to give you an answer that it thinks is the best possible answer for that question. So guys, be careful about what you ask, because you're going to get an answer that may not make sense. David, such a delightful conversation already. Let's pick another example from your experience in the product development environment where AI could be a particularly powerful tool.
Well, another area that I've seen a lot of real benefit to be honest, is even with just the engineers themselves. Now, we talked about writing software, for instance. Now, the caution I have with that is if you're going to use a model to, hey, write code for you, that kind of thing, the benefits that I've seen have come from giving it small little tasks to do that aren't safety critical, so to speak, right? I wouldn't trust it to write safety critical functions for me, but little snippets are great. Or when you are in the development space and getting bug reports from the field or from your test engineers and things like that, a lot of us work with Jira. We call them Jiras, right? You get a Jira and you got to figure it out. I found that some of these models are really good at taking a look at the information that comes in those bug reports, those tickets, those Jiras, and helping you debug, essentially. Where's the problem in my code? Where am I going wrong? Why are we getting this weird data? Having it go through that code way faster than I can, that's for sure. And then you say, here's a couple of things we can look at. Or here's my proposal on a difference change that I think will fix this bug, and you can review it like a code review and approve whether or not we're going to implement it, that kind of.
So yeah. I hear you. I think what you are saying is that take baby steps and first start applying it to an existing code for debugging and also troubleshooting and post-market. I totally get it. But David, let's also be a little bit honest about that. That's not where we can make the biggest impact. We can make the biggest impact where we actually write the first code. And I agree with you. Don't start with the safety critical component, but start with something smaller and write it right away, and then iterate on it and reduce the time it takes you to debug. Let's double click on this because I'm so curious to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm going to give you a scenario. Let's say I have an app on my phone that connects to my CGM, and it does two jobs. First job is it collects data, displays information, gives me alarms and whatnot. Say it can also allow me to give like a boost of insulin on demand. So it has two parts. What I'm hearing you say is that in this environment, it might be worthwhile to explore the data display sort of functionality first instead of the insulin boost functionality. How do you feel about that? Because I want us to frame this in a very concrete way for our audience. Let's go a little bit deep into it.
Yeah, I agree. I would have it focus more on the alarm side of things, and you might be able to use it for the insulin side of things, but again, as a cognitive tool, right, to help you develop that as opposed to having it write it for you, I'd say. One of the things I found to be extremely beneficial too is not just relying on one AI model alone. Certain ones are great for certain types of tasks. So we talked about requirements writing earlier. Maybe I used one tool to help me write requirements. And I've actually even had some hobby projects where I say hobby project, but my own side projects where I will have the requirements and I will say, okay, help me convey to the model that I'm using to develop code how to essentially write a function based on this requirement. And
Interesting.
It'll almost be like, here's how you want to talk to this AI so that you don't overuse it, so that it doesn't overstretch its boundaries, so that it'll give you exactly what you want to see in a package that you can look at and then approve. And so I found that to be extremely effective, being like, hey, here's the requirement that I'm designing to. What are some of the things that we can do? And then also come up with what you think the function should look like. And then I will review it. And sometimes you see it's like, okay, you wrote that totally wrong, or like way inefficient, but that can be another source where low hanging fruit. Again, high impact, low risk.
High impact, low risk. And something like, what am I missing?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. We have an excellent quote from Rodney here. Thank you for sharing, Rodney. True is only knows what you train to it, but have to recognize if you train it with weak data, you will get weak answers. Absolutely. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
How do we ensure that our training data set is of high quality? What are some other factors we should think about?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question, to be honest. And a lot of the models that I use, I haven't had to necessarily train myself, but one of the things that I have been able to do is, how am I say this? When I've come up with a very good set of instructions on how I want a certain model to interact with me, that becomes transferable. Like, hey, now I'm working on a new project. Let's take that back again. I want to use this same style of development, if you will, now with this particular AI model. And I want us to interact in much the same way we did on that other project, where we had really good results and things like that. So sort of reinforcing the good behaviors, if you will, that you've had over time and that you've crafted over time when interacting with these. It makes a lot of sense, right? Though, where if you feed AI garbage information, I mean, it's going to give you garbage out, right? I mean, that's just true of a lot of different software and computers in general.
Yes.
And AI is not really unique to it. And how do you make sure that you're not feeding it with garbage?
Make sure.
Well, yeah.
So the first question we should ask with work on with the team is, let's figure out the criteria by which we will judge our data quality before we start using AI. So I think that's a good point. Maybe collaborate with people. We have a good question here, David. Could you give an example how AI can be used safely for initial discovery phase of product development? This is even before design controls come in, I think. For example, can we use AI effectively to do IP and freedom to practice searches in idea stage? Any concerns?
I would go back to what we've said before on this. It can be used as a great cognitive tool to be like, hey, have you thought about this yet? So I think the question should be, can I rely exclusively on AI for the initial discovery phase of product development? I think my answer to that would be no. You'd still want to have the effort go into that initial discovery phase like you normally do. But then maybe you can get some AI involved after that and be like, here's what we've come up with. And then use AI as that cognitive tool to be like, did you notice this one? Hey, did you see this particular IP or product or freedom of practice, that kind of thing? So
the bottom line is that don't use it as an exclusive tool, but use it iteratively with other tools and other sources of information to build on what you already have. That's 100%. The way to think about it. Yeah. A lot of discussion going on in our audience today, guys, which I love. Please continue to do that, and I'll bring your questions and comments as much as I can. So, David, it's going so fast, but I do want to switch gears a little bit and just gain your perspective on one important point that I keep thinking about. Yeah, this is all nice. And all of us technical people, we get super excited about tools and technologies. At the end, we have to make a convincing case to our leadership to make sure they understand it is worth investing and giving us the freedom to kind of work on it. So what in your mind would be a good app to actually bring this in front of our leadership so that we have a positive outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is I feel like a lot of us obviously listening in right now, and even myself to some degree, we're still trying to feel out what it is AI can do for us and how to leverage it and things like that. And I would say the senior leadership is going to be in the same boat. They're getting directives that, hey, We want you to implement this. We want you to use this. We want you to find something to do here. But they're also not going to be able to know which questions to ask you to make you defend whatever it is that you're trying to deploy. So my thought is, you want to come to the table with a lot of, here's what we're going to do. Like, what is the workflow that we're intending to do with this? Here's very specifically what it's going to do for us, how that's going to speed things up for us or save us some costs. And here's what the risks are that we've looked at with it and how we're going to mitigate them. Right. Mm-hmm. So I've mentioned this before in other conversations, but, we're always here like, oh, don't over volunteer information. You always hear that. Don't volunteer information that you don't need to volunteer. In this case, since it's such a new thing, I almost am like, no. You want to maybe volunteer more than you normally would because you want to make sure that senior management has confidence in what you're trying to do. And when you volunteer that much information, they'll get a chance to ask questions that they wouldn't have even thought of previously.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So it's almost like developing an intended use statement for the AI application you are thinking about.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. You got to have a very clear idea of what the intended use is. And not just a nebulous, like, well, we're going to figure it out along the way.
We're going to figure it out. No, that's not going to work. So I think this is the language that all of us will understand in the QA/RA world, is that we can't start the work on the device without defining the intended use. And that same thing applies to the AI application also. What a great advice. One more point I want to touch on with you, because that could be of interest to people. Hey, it's a software. So what kind of software validation requirements might apply to the AI?
Yeah, so software validation requirements, I feel like we look to the FDA and MedTech for like, hey, what is it that, their guidance is on this? And really right now, they don't have a lot of new product development guidance around this. They have a guidance centered around, hey, we're making this med device and it's going to have AI as part of it to make decisions and things like that. But I still think that can be leveraged, right? If, they have guidance out there right now on how to leverage this for QMS and production. And we can validate it in much the same way, right? Understanding, again, what the intended use is, what's the workflow that it's going to be executing for you, and being very specific about that. And then understanding, okay, let's take a look at the risks involved with that particular workflow as we implement it into new product development. So I think we can still follow that same pattern, and very similar to how we validate software as well.
So I think to add to that point, what I'm thinking here is that if you apply it to user requirements, then it becomes part of your design control. And I think you will have to validate that software.
Yep,
is that
100%.
my right understanding?
That is exactly right.
Mm-hmm. So make sure, guys, you understand the validation requirements also, and your pitch to senior management should be complete before you go there with that idea and a proposal and a timeline about that. Okay, we have another great question here, and let me read that. How do we ensure that human intervention or critical analysis is consistently applied at the right points through the use of AI? That is, could you share if you were able to create instructions for AI use in processes? And I'm guessing it's like manufacturing process maybe, or let's assume that we are still talking about product development. But David, you decide how you want to address it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in terms of the new product development specifically. Now, how do we ensure that we get human intervention or critical analysis with this? I think it still needs to be part of the reviews that we do during the product development process. So during each gate of the development process, we have either a review with the entire team of stakeholders, or when we're talking about risk management, maybe we have a risk review board, things like that. Now that has to become a point of discussion during those risk review boards or during those design reviews that happen. Here's what we had AI help us with, and then here's what we did to scrutinize that with the stakeholders, and making sure that everyone in there has a good warm fuzzy at least on like, hey, you did it right, you implemented it correctly, you had a process in your QMS on how to use this. Yeah, and that's really no different than
anything else. So it brings up another point. Then we have to also define the criteria by which we will judge it. We just cannot say, hey, we did this worked, this does not work. How do you guys feel? One thing, it's a pet peeve of mine, I want to share that with you, is that sometimes we go into the reviews actually feeling like we can dump the decision on the decision makers without giving them the right information. So it's a criticism that I'm observing, and I think we should be careful about that, is if we are asking the decision makers to make a decision, we should also give them the criteria by which those decisions can be made.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right. Sure. Right. So let's be mindful of that. Otherwise, we always feel like our decision makers are not making the right decisions, and we have all these conversations. So part of it is on us as well. Guys, what a fascinating conversation, David, and time flies. We are almost at the end. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just process this information, synthesize it in 2 or 3 key takeaway points that we can share. with everybody today.
Mhm.
In the meantime, I want to share with you another very exciting announcement that I hope you will like, and I'm personally excited about that. I know that many of you already know that Let's Talk Risk is about helping us become better at applying risk management to real world situations. It's not just about compliance, but how can we get better? And this requires becoming better at critical thinking and applying judgment, right? We all agree with that, especially when the situation is complex and data is limited. And that's our real world life, which is why I'm so excited to share with you that I have created this thing, what I call Let's Talk Risk Coach, or a LTR coach. And it is an AI powered, what I call thinking partner. I think, David, you used the word cognitive partner. It's a coach for medtech professionals, and it is not to replace our expertise. It is designed to organize our thinking, challenge assumptions, and create options for better decision making. This is what the purpose is. And I have trained it exclusively. It doesn't go out and use other materials, exclusively on my own knowledge and practical experience. So all the knowledge sources it uses are based on my own knowledge. And right now it's available on a limited launch basis. So if you guys are interested, reach out to me and I'll let you take a shot at it and see how you like. With that, David, the floor is yours. Please share 2 or 3 key points.
Yeah. So my takeaways from using AI for new product development here would be, first off, making sure that you really understand what the workflow is going to be and the intended use, and focusing on the high impact but low risk implementations that can save you some time and money. So nothing safety critical, at least up front, until you really understand what you're doing. Next would be making sure that you gate or limit what AI is able to do. Try to have it be a cognitive partner with you and not essentially making decisions for you. So kind of going back to the idea that it can't be held accountable. If I'm expecting this tool to be held accountable, maybe I need to go back to the planning just a little bit and rework how that's being used. And then finally, we talked earlier about how we approach management with proposals for this. And my guidance there is, don't be afraid to over volunteer information, because they're not going to be sure what questions to ask up front on this, because they don't have a lot of experience with it. So make sure that you produce all that information, all the receipts, and let them poke holes in it and make it better.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. I had so much fun with this. Guys,
Absolutely.
I hope you had fun with this conversation as well. And this is what we do at Let's Talk Risk. We talk about complex topics in a very casual, informal way. Thank you for showing up. I hope you show up once again in our next session. David, can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I wish you all the best in your new venture.
Thank you very much, Naveen, and it was a pleasure.